So as for the students, I'm definitely the most hated person on campus, and I'm very proud of that.
Hey, you know what? I feel like you and I could be like, I could be like an older brother to you because, you're just, I'm the same way. Well, Macy Gunnell, nice to have you on the podcast here today. St. Mary's student, involved in Gen Z politics. You've worked with Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk. You've worked at the White House. You want to go work at the White House even more. There's a lot of great things about you. That's why we wanted to have you on the podcast and just talk about what's going on in America. You see it probably better than most, being at St. Mary's College up in South Bend, and then standing for conservative values as somebody who's younger, right? You're in that Gen Z population. And so I think what you're doing is great. You've got a great spirit. You've got great communication skills. And so we're like, let's get her on the podcast here, Unscripted with Micah Beckwith. So happy to have you on.
Perfect.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm honored. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your journey and why you're passionate about standing up for conservative values.
Oh boy, how much time do we have? So the best way to put it is, I grew up a Hoosier, super proud of my roots, and I grew up with a love and an adoration for these conservative principles that raised me. I wouldn't be here, number one, without my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, but second of all, I wouldn't be here without the conservative financial principles I grew up on. I didn't even have a conventional childhood. I grew up having to work for my own. I grew up having to work to pay for my own college. I worked like 75 hours a week in a warehouse the summer before my freshman year of college. So all these things, it's Hoosier values of just of hard work, of financial literacy, all these things that have really made me who I am. Yeah. And whether that be through all the great times, all the not so great times, I'm just super grateful for all of the lessons I've learned. That's honestly because I grew up as a Hoosier. So I'm super grateful that I was able to have that upbringing. But I fell in love not just with my state, but also with my nation, because I wouldn't be where I'm at without all the amazing things I've been blessed with in terms of growing up in the U.S. Because, obviously, I'm born and raised a Hoosier, but, learning about all these other countries, learning about how everyone else has it, I know how grateful we should be, and I am very grateful for all the roots I can attest to in terms of just who I am now. So I definitely speak a lot towards what it was like growing up as a Hoosier and growing up as a U.S. citizen in terms of who I am, just because I'm so grateful. This is a privilege I do not take for granted at all. I've just fallen in love with my nation. I hope to serve it any way I can.
That's amazing. And so your journey led you to St. Mary's.
Yes.
All right. So we know St. Mary's is tied into Notre Dame, right? So up there in South Bend, obviously Notre Dame's a big part of the Hoosier life. Yep. And so tell us about what it's like being a conservative on the college campus of St. Mary's.
Right.
Because St. Mary's, from my understanding, is a little more left-leaning, maybe a lot more left-leaning than even Notre Dame is, which even Notre Dame is not really a stalwart in conservative values like they used to be. So what is going on? How did these two colleges that should be just steeped in biblical truth, right? Because they're Catholic universities, they stand on supposedly the Word of God, right, as the ultimate authority. We know God's Word leads us to a lot more of those conservative type principles. How did they get to the place where you now have experiences where you're talking about, things like there's Gaza protests, pro-Gaza protests going on, or the trans movement is being pushed at St. Mary's. Like, tell us about your experience. Is that coming from administration? Is that coming from students? Like, what's going on up there?
Right. So first of all, I went to St. Mary's with the expectation that I would have a Christian conservative education. I could not have been farther from wrong.
Wow.
Quickly discovered that whenever I went to St. Mary's, I found out that, the best way to describe it is St. Mary's is definitely just a hotspot for feminist misery. Okay. It's an all-girls school. It's an all-girls Catholic school.
So you said feminist misery.
Feminist misery is the best way to describe St. Mary's, because they focus so much on women's empowerment, but yet every single class teaches about how we're oppressed because men are in charge. One of my first political science classes, the very first day, my professor said, all of government is all old, straight white people, and that's a problem. And then continued to spend the entire semester talking about how this is the system that we can't unravel unless we completely gut the Constitution. So it's these America-hating feminist misery principles that I'm getting education on.
Wow.
Why I'm still there, that's, I guess, another story. But I've just been astonished to see how far left St. Mary's is. So I'm definitely one of a few conservatives on there. I want to hope that we're the silent majority. I can't be too sure. But it's honestly astonishing how far left St. Mary's is.
It's interesting you say the silent majority. I think the silent majority has been the problem in America. If we are the majority,
we shouldn't be silent.
We shouldn't be silent.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be silent if it was just us versus the whole world. Like,
right.
if you plus God equals the majority, if you're on the side of what God says is right, then you should be vocal about it. And I get really frustrated with the silent majority because even Scripture tells us the power of life and death is in the tongue. Right? So if you want life, you got to speak it into existence, right? You got to speak truth into existence. And so what happens, when you're out, obviously you're very articulate, well-spoken, conservative. What happens when you speak out in a class at St. Mary's when you know you have a very leftist, far left, professor that probably is going to not agree with you? Do you feel like there's ever been any repercussions of that? Or tell us what goes through your mind when you're being you,
So as for the students, I'm definitely the most hated person on campus, and I'm very proud of that.
Hey, you know what? I feel like you and I could be like, I could be like an older brother to you because, you're just, I'm the same way whenever I'm in leftist.
Yeah, so I joke I'm public enemy number one on that campus, and it's true. There are some good conservative women there that I've been able to find and been able to be friends with. But in terms of the students, they hate me. I'm getting death threats. I'm getting everything on the spectrum.
I thought they were supposed to be tolerant.
Well, hate to break it to you, they are not. Yeah. The party of love and inclusivity is anything but.
Yeah.
So as for the students, they all hate me. I'm proud of that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I'm stubborn. I can deal with it.
Yeah.
The administrators and the professors, I definitely see different treatment as well. First of all, the administration, they also hate my guts.
Okay.
But, if I was pleasing these far lefters, I'd be doing something wrong.
That's right. That's good.
Yeah, and then as for professors, it's very evident they get very tense whenever I speak up. That's just because they're all so brainwashed by this far left rhetoric that they're pushing. Again, it's this ideal of feminist misery that they're just pushing out. They want to push out all these liberals, so they get kind of scared whenever they find out that there's someone who thinks for herself.
Yeah.
And doesn't want to succumb to the never-ending feminist
Do you ever
misery.
get students, this happens in my world, like people will come up to me and they'll say, hey, thanks for what you're saying. I agree with you. I just don't have the courage to say it. Or I can't say it, for fear of retribution, all that kind of stuff. Do you ever get people like that at St. Mary's? They're like, oh man, we are so in lockstep with you. Thank you for being on the front lines. And,
I do.
Yeah, do you?
I do,
Good.
yeah.
Good.
And it's really upsetting that these people are too scared to speak out. Especially at St. Mary's, they're teaching us to be strong women who speak out. So I hope that they would take that, and they would take that to heart. Some people are just too scared about the repercussions.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to show them that no matter what, I'm still alive. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm thriving, honestly, ever since I have been speaking out. So it's really nothing to be scared of. I know, I make it seem like, I'm the most hated person on campus, but it begins with each and every student.
Yeah.
If we can create a movement, if we can make a new norm, then I really do believe that that's going to have amazing repercussions for St. Mary's. Because at this point, I'm just worried about saving the school. Because if we don't do something, if we don't turn around what's going on at the school, they're going to be done within a matter of years. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Okay, so St. Mary's is under the leadership of Notre Dame.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Notre Dame, now I know you don't go there officially you're not a Notre Dame student, but is the culture that bad at Notre Dame too? If not, wouldn't the administration, and again, it's a Catholic school, it's a religious school rooted in God's word. Why in the world has leftism taken hold of these institutions that are pinnacle institutions within the state of Indiana and really our nation, right? How is it that leftism has gotten its claws in there? Because leftism, we know, is very counter to what God's word says. So what does Notre Dame do about this? What are they saying? Is there any accountability that Notre Dame officials are stepping in and say, hey, what is happening with St. Mary's and why is feminism being pushed in such a hard way over at St. Mary's?
Right. Well, as for Notre Dame itself, I'd say they're a good 50-50.
Okay.
They actually have solid Catholic leadership.
Okay.
And they do a really great job of speaking for truth. They have an amazing college Republicans chapter. They have an amazing pro-life group there as well.
Okay.
So honestly, there are some great conservative voices there that I think are holding the university together. And then, of course, you have the outliers. You have the pro-Palestine, free Gaza,
you said that,
blue-haired they-thems.
Yeah, the blue-haired they-thems. I love it. So you said that Ron DeSantis came a few months ago,
yes.
right?
Yep.
And there was a plethora of...
He was met with anything but love.
Pro-Palestine,
right?
LGBTQ, which is crazy to me when you have LGBTQ people holding up pro-Palestinian signs. It's like, do you know what happens to the LGBTQ in Gaza? They throw you off buildings.
It's like chickens for KFC.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's like, to me, it is the most nonsensical. It just shows you that they're brainwashed.
Right.
Because they can't critically think. But so that happened, and because I remember seeing the news when DeSantis came and that the protesters were there. Is that a small minority at Notre Dame? Is that, for the most part, people were like, hey, we're glad to have DeSantis here? Was that typical of Notre Dame?
I'd say it's a good 50-50.
Okay.
I really do think that those crazy ones are the minority, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
And the university has done a great job in terms of both protecting free speech, but also not allowing all these things that they obviously don't approve of to happen. So it may have seemed like a big thing, all these people were protesting, but honestly, like, they're doing way better than the St. Mary's is. So I just wish that these people would step in as St. Mary's, but they're not, and that's a huge part of the issue.
On the national scale, we're seeing Gen Z shift, going back to conservative values in a big way. I mean, this last election, especially young men, even, like, we're really far more conservative than most demographics. And I know, working with Charlie and TPUSA, and you're the secretary for the National College Republicans, you get to see a lot of young people in your context. What makes you think the reason is behind the shift in Gen Z now, like sort of abandoning what my generation, the millennial generation, have basically gone, off the cliff of stupid and embraced leftism in the majority. Why is Gen Z? Why is it shifting back?
Right. So it's interesting you bring up men. I can tell you 100% what's going on with young men. It's because the left, they are the party of anti-men. No sensible young man is going to want to be a part of a movement that hates them, because every single liberal talking point is, we live in the patriarchy and this is a system that we have to dismantle, this patriarchy, all these old straight white men. No sensible young man wants to be a part of a movement that hates them. Yeah. So that's 100% the root of the shift there in terms of men. In terms of both women and young men, I think the biggest thing is that people are waking up and realizing that the liberal agenda is not a prosperous agenda for young Americans, because the agenda and the things that we vote for now is going to be our future, and that's going to be the basis of what we grow up on, what we go out into the world in, what we raise our kids in. And no sensible person can look at the liberal agenda these days and say, oh yeah, that's a prosperous.
It's going to work for me. Yeah.
No, the conservative ideals of things like, economic and fiscal responsibility, patriotism, all these things, that's what's going to create for a prosperous America. And no young person in their right mind is going to look at this conservative agenda and not want it. Except, of course, there are some still. Yes, we're shifting towards the right, but there definitely are a lot of young kids who they don't take any. They just take everything at surface value. They don't do their own research. They don't actually look into it. No critical thinking, and it's scary because these are people I realize I'm going to have to go out and work with one day. So again, the shift is inspiring. There still are some people left that we got to bring on, but that's why groups like Turning Point USA, all these national conservative groups, they are so important, because it's breaking down all of these arguments down to their basis, and young people are realizing, this liberal agenda doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So that's the reason for the shift.
Truth is something that can stand on its own 2 feet, right?
Right.
And when something isn't true, because the further you start breaking it down, the more it starts to implode upon itself, right? And so, but if it's true, it'll stay strong. Mm-hmm. And I think what I love about Gen Z and when they're diving into truth, they don't really care who's saying what. It's not like oh, well, my parents said it, therefore I don't believe it, or my friend said it, therefore I do believe it. They're saying, I don't really care who's saying it. I want to get down to the bottom of this argument to see if it really is true. Mm-hmm. And they're beginning to start to come back to critical thinking and things of that nature. And I think it's really encouraging. To your point earlier, there's still people out there that drink the Kool-Aid and they're not gonna be able to think for themselves. They're gonna think, what a millennial professor tells them to think. They're just gonna buy into that. I'm really proud of you for standing up and saying, hey, this is true. Even most young people won't ever go up against a professor, and their friends as well. Like I just want to get along, right? I just want to get an A, get through this class. get my diploma, and then go. But if you never learn to stand for what you believe in, you're always going to be in a situation. Then you're going to go to your job. I just don't want to make my boss mad, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, right? I just, I get a promotion. I don't want to make, the CEO mad now. I just want to keep my mouth shut. And I think we're doing ourselves a very big disservice when we don't teach students how to civically debate, engage in counter thought. So I love what you're doing. Tell me a little bit about there's a boycott. It was a trans issue boycott that was going on at St. Mary's. Tell me about that, because I heard a little bit about that, but I want to get your perspective on what was happening.
All right, so this was 2023. Okay. This was my sophomore year. I was I was a sophomore fall semester.
Okay.
I was working in the admissions office as an admissions ambassador, giving tours, representing the school, all that fun stuff. And it was some random Tuesday. I overheard my boss in the room next door talking about the new admissions policy. So I asked the secretary there, what's he talking about? What's this new admissions policy? Remember, St. Mary's is a Catholic women's school.
Okay.
There was a new policy in the works to introduce trans women into the admissions. Yes, so biological men into the admissions process. That put me in a really hard spot. As a sophomore, I was 19. I had this job. I was like, okay, I should either speak out and stand for truth, lose my job, or I can stay silent, let this cripple the school, because I knew for a fact that would cripple. I mean, the school was built as a Catholic women's college. It was built to be exclusive. So a policy like this meant to be inclusive would defy the entire point of the school. Right. So I ended up speaking out, went to a few news outlets. It blew up pretty fast. Got in touch with all these different alumni groups, friends, family, all that across the nation. And we actually had a pretty strong coalition growing. We were able to organize a mass financial boycott. School lost millions of dollars. So within a month, the policy ended up getting reversed.
That's amazing.
Yes.
You got on some national news outlets?
Yes.
Like you were on Fox News and other news outlets too, sharing what was going on.
Right.
To me, it's it's so funny. I mean, I laugh at that. It's like, if I'm a 18-year-old dude thinking about where I can go to college and I can fake my way into an all-girls college, I'm taking that route every single time. Right. Because it's like, hey, I'm going to college. I want to date some attractive young women, right? And there is how do administrators not understand this?
They didn't.
It's like, guys, you're getting played. You're getting played by guys who are 18-year-olds. They're sneaking their way into your school just because they either want to take advantage of the all-women policy, or like we see in the sports world, they know they can't compete with men, so they're going into, and this is what I love about Riley Gaines. She's been speaking up, exposing that for what it is, and proving that, no, these men are still men. They just are playing the system so that they can be something that they're really not, and be greater than what they really are.
Right.
And how is it that like an administrator at St. Mary's doesn't see that?
Okay, so here's a funny story. Okay. So me being the stubborn person I am, I released this, got into this whole fight. I marched right into the president's office, had a meeting with her and the vice president, basically saying, what the heck are you doing?
Okay.
I asked them, what are your plans for this? How are you going to determine if they're actually a trans woman, whatever that means? How are you going to house them? Where are they going to sleep? Where are they going to shower?
Sure.
All of that. They had zero answers to a single question.
Had they not thought that through yet?
No, they didn't think that through. And so their plan was just to include them all with the rest of us.
Oh my God.
And the mere conversation just showed me that these people are the last people I should trust in terms of this argument.
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily, throw anybody under the bus here, but like were they receptive to your pushback, or did they start throwing out things like, you're just being intolerant, you're an ist, homophobe, whatever it is? Like what was there, or were they like, Macy, it's actually very, very good that you asked that. We hadn't thought about that. I don't know which is worse, honestly, that they hadn't thought about it, or that they were just trying to throw out all the name calling. Like, what was their response to you when you came in with those logistical questions?
Right. So, I'll give it to them. They didn't call me any names.
Okay. That's good.
That's the bare minimum for these adults to be talking to a child in essence. They obviously were not happy with the argument that I had. They were very hesitant. They were not happy to even have had that meeting in the first place. And they had no intentions of wanting to reverse it. This is about in the middle of like the month that this entire thing took place. So they were not happy with my presence there. They were not happy that I was speaking out. And I told them, I'm going to keep speaking out. And if I have to sue you for everything you're worth, I will do it.
Nice.
They were not happy to hear that.
Good for you.
But I mean, at the end of the day, it got reversed. They weren't happy about reversing it. I still believe that they're going to try to do it one day.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just waiting out my graduation. I don't know.
Waiting
but
until this troublemaker,
Right.
Macy Gunnell graduates. So you need to be raising up other Macy's, right? You need to be raising up other people who are following your lead, right? And passing your legacy off to them so that they can take over when you're not there anymore. But this is happening right in Indiana. This is a crazy thing to me, and this is why it's important to have you on this podcast. So you're in the lieutenant governor's office. You're having this podcast. People will oftentimes tell me this is not actually happening in Indiana. They'll say things like, "Oh, DEI doesn't really exist in Indiana, right? That's not really happening. Like this, you're making something bigger than it really is. You're turning a mountain into a mole, or a molehill into a mountain, right? And you stopped, maybe single-handedly, maybe with a few others, but God used you to stop St. Mary's in Indiana from allowing men to be sleeping in the same dorms, using the same bathrooms, going to the same classes in an all-girls school with other young women, right? And that to me is kudos to you. Thank you for doing that. On behalf of the state of Indiana, thank you. But it also is very frightening that, like, had you not done what you did, maybe we would be seeing men right now walking into class and sleeping in the same, rooms and using the same bathrooms, showering in the same showers potentially, right? As women, our precious women in Indiana, at St. Mary's. And so I just, I applaud you, but it also makes me very concerned to your point, I don't think they're done fighting for that.
Right.
I think they're just as dumb as they were a couple years ago.
Right.
They've just realized the culture has shifted. They got too far out over their skis. They're sitting back. They're waiting for their time. They're going to buy their time. And then once they see their shot, they're going to take it again, without a doubt. So what are we doing to solidify and armor up so that when they take their shot again, we don't buy into their nonsense?
Right. So I think there's two arguments to this. There's both St. Mary's and the national level. Because, again, this is not just Indiana. This is not just St. Mary's. This is all across the nation.
Yep.
So as for St. Mary's, I'm the president of our Turning Point USA chapter as well as our College Republicans chapter. So I've been able to grow a pretty amazing group of young women. And I'm teaching them and showing them that, like, you cannot lose if you have truth and faith on your side.
Love it.
And we as conservatives are lucky because we have both those things
That's
on our
right.
side.
Yes, we do.
So that's what I've been teaching them is that, like, there really is no way to lose with those two things. So when it comes to standing up, yes, it may seem scary, it may seem intimidating, you may be worried about your grades against your professors, but at the end of the day, like, we know who wins. Number one, God. Number two, truth. So that's the biggest thing I'm trying to teach these young women. And I really do believe that there are
God
great people
is the
following
truth,
me.
right?
Yes.
God is the truth.
Yes.
Jesus says,
Amen.
I am the way, the truth, and the life,
Amen.
right? And so really you only lose if you don't stand up.
Right.
I mean, so kind of like what FDR said back in World War II, we have nothing to fear but fear itself.
Right.
And FDR was a Democrat. I'm quoting a Democrat right here
Wow.
on the Lieutenant Governor's podcast. But how true is that? I mean, that is very true. Like, oftentimes, the people on our side, the conservative, the truth-based people, what I've noticed is they get scared of their own shadow.
Right.
And they run in the other way. And had they just stood up and said, you know what, come hell or high water, I'm not backing down because I know this is the right thing to do. World War II could have been avoided. Had people just stood up at the beginning of that war. There was a moment where the Nazis were invading Western Europe, and they didn't have the ammo and they didn't have the mechanisms of the military yet in place to be able to take on superpowers like France or Great Britain. And so when the Nazis they were moving into France, I think they all had retreat orders on their person. If they met any resistance, their orders were to retreat because they didn't have the ammunition to fight back. But you know what they did? They put on this big facade, like, we're coming in. They stormed in, they invaded, and they met zero resistance. And had the leaders of the superpowers at the time just said, you know what, we're going to stand up because we know this is the right thing to do. Had they listened to someone like a Winston Churchill instead of a Neville Chamberlain, they would have stopped that war before it even started. But they didn't stand up. And they just said, oh no, this big scary army is coming in. Well, it really at the time wasn't a big scary army.
Right.
It was an army that was an army, but they could have been stopped pretty easily had someone just said, you're not passing this line, and we will make sure we do everything in our power not to let you pass this line. And I find that's true today in our culture where, like you said so eloquently, we got truth and we got the Lord on our side.
Right.
And we win if we just stand up. But yeah, people get so scared and they're like, ooh, I don't know if I want to stand up.
Right.
And it's a big scary monster. Well, it's not actually as big and scary as you think it is. You just have, gotten scared of your own shadow and run away. So yeah, I appreciate what you're doing. So, okay, what's your next, you're junior now, or actually you're senior now.
Yes.
You just got done with your junior year.
Yes, I did.
So, okay, well, let me back up. So you stopped the trans issue from actually becoming an issue on St. Mary's College.
Yes.
Any blowback from like students and stuff after that? I mean, I know you said, okay, like you are hated, but like, do they specifically point back to that and be like, you're a bigot, you're intolerant because of that issue? Or is it just the whole, you're a conservative and they just don't like it?
I mean, yeah, I definitely am the anti-trans girl. I definitely am the bigot on campus, which if that's what they want to call truth seeker, then I guess I'll take it. So yeah, that definitely is a legacy that I guess I continue to hold on campus. But no matter what, I just want to show people that I'm not stopping there, and I haven't. So I'm the big, conservative on campus, which, I'm definitely proud of because it's more than just me. It's more than just these students. It's about all the alumni. It's about the future of the college. I know that there's so much at stake based on what we do right now in this moment. Yeah. And that's why I take what I do just so seriously because it's so much bigger than me. And I'm so willing to take all these name callings. Like I'm so willing to take all the bullying if it means that I can stand for truth and faith, and if it means that I can save and stand up for what the school was meant to be for in the first place.
That's awesome. What do you want to do after college? What's kind of your plans then?
Oh boy. So I definitely have fallen in love with just standing up for, again, truth and faith and standing up for my country especially. So I want to serve my country any way I can. For me, I definitely have a knack when it comes to communication and, just even like digital strategy, stuff like that. So I'm really hoping to go back out to DC. The dream job would be to work in the White House and to help the mission of communicating the efforts of transparency to the American people.
So you'd want to work with Caroline Levitt then?
That's the dream.
That's the dream?
That's the dream, yeah.
Maybe someday step into a comms director, press secretary job.
Lord's will, not mine.
Yeah,
but that's
but
the
you'd
goal.
be okay with that if that was God's will. Yeah,
100%.
I love it. I could see you doing that. I think you'd be a really good, like a Caroline Levitt.
Well,
you'd also be, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, right? Mm-hmm. It's amazing some of the, the really talented, bold women that we've seen in that role recently.
Right.
You have Kayleigh McEnany too. Yep. We've got some really impressive conservative women on our side. I'm so thankful for what God is doing in raising up these warrior women. Really is what they are. Whether it's warrior moms, boy, I'll tell you what. Like, go back in the school board battles the last few years. Right. It's been the mama bears that have been stepping up, defending our kids. Men have been, unfortunately not there as much. Mm-hmm. We've got some awesome young conservatives. We've got some bold conservatives, especially on the female side, where they're saying, we're gonna do our part too. And we know the difference between what a man is and what a woman is. So that helps, right? that helps on our side.
The bare minimum.
Well, that's awesome. Okay, so if people want to follow you on social media, if they want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I'm definitely on Instagram. Real Macy Gunnell, I believe, is my tag. I'm on X. I have a decent amount of following there. I believe that one's Macy Gunnell. But yeah, I do a lot online to not only show what I'm doing on my own campus, but also what I do across the nation. I work with College Republicans of America, so I help communicate everything that Gen Zers across the nation are doing. There's so many amazing things that are happening in terms of this nationwide conservative movement. So there's a lot of really exciting things that are happening, and I have the honor of helping to communicate. So I definitely would encourage people to follow along because it's not about me. This is about the entire future of our country.
Yeah. That's amazing, Macy. And thank you just again on behalf of the state, on behalf of the future of our nation. Thanks for what you're doing. I know you probably don't hear it enough where, you take all the arrows. You've got a warrior spirit about you, and I love that. I'm attracted to fellow warriors in the fight, right? I want men and women who are going to stand up and go to war for what they believe in and link arms with you, right? So we just don't get that a ton anymore in our culture. So thanks for what you're doing. I think while you may have lost some friends along the way, I bet you're going to gain far more because of your courage to stand out and ultimately do what God says is right.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the goal is if you can stand before the Lord someday and he says, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant," then you're gonna. That's all that matters.
All that matters.
Right.
Yep.
And so I appreciate what you're doing. So thanks. Keep it up. Let us know how we can help in the Lieutenant Governor's office. And excited to see the journey and where God leads you after this.
Definitely. Thanks so much. Thank you for everything you guys are doing as well. I mean, what you guys are doing for the Hoosier State and for the nation really is just so inspiring. So I'm so grateful. As a young American, as a young Hoosier, thank you for everything you're doing as well.
We try to keep it right at 30.
Okay.
And so, I'm like, I think it's probably, pretty
You had a
close.
good conversation with a Democrat senator.
Yeah,
that was a long one.
Greg Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was longer, but that's because we were just going back and forth. Yeah.
Great material, though. Great
Yeah.
material.
Yeah.